All right. Welcome to the Jake Blanchard podcast. My guest today is Matt J. Byron. He's a man of many talents. He has an extremely interesting story. He's a musician. He lived fast for a few years. He built success in a few different industries and businesses. He's currently the CEO of Evolution Art Studio in Las Vegas, Nevada, one of the coolest companies that I've come across. They design, fabricate, package, ship, install custom art installments all around the country. Matt, I'm excited to have you on the podcast, my man. It's good to see you again.
Hey, Jake, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Hey, so you're out in Henderson, Nevada. What's so significant about Henderson? Why are you out in Henderson, man?
Okay, so Henderson is one of the coolest cities on the planet. I got here 30 years ago, and there was about 40,000 people in Henderson.
Okay.
There's about 300,000 people in all of the valley.
And that's right outside of Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, we're right next. We're part of the Las Vegas Valley.
Okay.
And Henderson now has about 350,000 people in it. I've been fortunate to be part of the birth of a major metropolis, which has been a really cool experience to have been part of. But Henderson is just such a unique city. It came out of the war effort. It revolved around a titanium factory that made titanium parts for airplanes for the war effort for World War II. The city almost became non-existent, and then through an act of the state legislature, it became a city again. So wow. For many years, Henderson was kind of like the podunk, like the redheaded stepchild to Las Vegas that, all the goofy, they used to call it Hendertucky. Now the Raiders have their practice facility here. The Golden Knights have practice facilities here. It is urban. It is dynamic. It has got all kinds of, it's such a cool city. Yeah, and they're very, very deeply involved in arts and culture and athletics. So it's really fun. We've won the gold medal for Parks and Recs 8 out of the last 10 years.
Wow. Yeah. I have a little bit of a connection to Henderson. I get down to Las Vegas at least once or twice a year. Some of my closest friends from high school actually live in Henderson. Alex and Emily, shout out to them. Alex actually works with titanium ingots. He's a metallurgist. He does quality assurance around.
Does he work at TimeEt?
I'm not exactly sure who his employer is, but I'm assuming large creator.
Yeah, he's working with the large ingots. He's working at TimeEt, which is literally right down the street.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And it's the place has kind of grown on me a little bit as well. Like I gone down there. I've played Revere Golf Course every now and then with Mark, which is Emily's dad and Alex as well. So just really enjoying my time out in Henderson. So I can see why you like it.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Right. So so Evolution Art, man, I got on your website and I was perusing a little bit more before I had you on, and God, you've done some outstanding work, man. You're all over the place, all over the country with art installments. How did you get into doing this?
It was really interesting. So it was almost an accident. So I started off as a carpentry company, and then an art gallery called me and said, "Hey, we bought 100 picture frames from Mexico, and they're all damaged in the same place. Can you fix them?" "Yeah, we'll fix them." So then they're like, "We get this baseball trophy for Earl Hershiser's baseball camp. You think you can make it?" There was a bunch of baseballs stuck on a board, painted orange and lettering. And yeah, we'll make that. Okay, so then do you think you could build a gigantic Connect 4 game? Yeah, we'll build that. What about a 30-foot tall steel periscope with cameras looking at Alcatraz? Yeah, we'll build that. And so it just, so we never said no.
So a giant Connect 4 game, what is somebody doing with that? Is that for like Hillsborough or something?
No, it's in San Francisco at Hotel Zephyr.
Oh, sure.
Beach Street in Embarcadero, looking right over at Pier 34. And if you're at Pier 34 looking back at that building, you see the top of the periscope sticking up over it. So in that whole courtyard they have back there, we did a Connect 4 game that's 12 feet long by 8 feet high. The coolest thing is the tubular ping pong table. It's the most used game in that courtyard. It's a ping pong table, 9 feet long, but it's a tube. It's got a net in the middle and you play ping pong in it. It's the crazy fun. And then the periscope is 30 feet tall but I have these video screens in it, and I put a camera on the top of the hotel. So when you're looking in the video screens, there's toggle switches on the handles. You can pan and zoom Alcatraz, Old Bay Bridge, New Bay Bridge, River Grand, Treasure Island, Coy Tower, Transamerica Building, Navy Pier, all the way back to you can see the whole city when you're looking in that periscope.
That's insane. That's awesome. So you started with some picture frames that you were mending, and then started building trophies, and all of a sudden you're building these giant custom art installments.
Yeah, and I'm good at the business of art, but I'm better at putting together the team. So I've got a core team of 8 guys, really famous sculptor named Ovidio Jimenez, who works with me. He does all the big sculpting and design work. And then, just the whole team, it's an amazing group of creative thinkers. And it's not just thinking, it's the doing. Like we'll figure it out.
Yeah, when I was looking at some of the pictures on the website, obviously there's one that stuck out to me because I've been there, I've seen it. I actually sat and watched people work around the structure for hours one day while I was in Vegas, which is the Arioli wine bar.
Oh yeah.
And for if anybody hasn't been to Mandalay and seen this place, I mean, they have wine angels, which is what I was watching. These people that are hooked up to these cables, and they're like suspended. Yeah. There's thousands of bottles of wine in this big glass structure. There's this crazy scaffolding around it. They're climbing all over it. And like I said before I had you on, I saw that your company did that install. Man, I'd love to hear a little bit about that, because that's one of my favorite all-time things to see when I'm in Vegas.
So on the outside walls, there's these big silver tree branches, and then there's these big lighted orbs that are all chrome. So we were part of that whole design package and fabrication package to put all that together. It's one of my favorite pieces of work to show people, because it's a really cool little bistro next door.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, hey, can I show you something? I'd be like, what are you talking about? I said, come here, I want to show you what I do. And they're like, well, what are you trying to show me? I said, trust me, just come walk over here 3 steps and look. And then I show them that, and they're like, oh my God, you guys made that? So
yeah, it's an outstanding piece of artwork. And again, as you just look at it, it's like, it's nuts. I mean, it's like, what? To me, it's like, it's the coolest way to get wine. It also seems like a very inconvenient way to get wine. I'm like calling in, and somebody's like, all right, and they rappel down from the ceiling, go grab your bottle and rappel back up.
It's very typical of Vegas, right? It's all about the show.
100%. I was wondering if it's probably people from like Circus Olay or something like that when they were.
No, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to it, but I know a lot of surf people, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of those people end up doing that. That's another what makes Vegas so cool is, it's gaming isn't the predominant industry, but all of the trades that are related to gaming. For example, we have some of the best world-class athletes here because of all the circ shows. Like, these people are former Olympians and former pro athletes, that are making crazy money working in circ. And there's a whole, the unions that support that, there's this whole infrastructure for all these cool things. Then again, like retired sports stars, there's hundreds of them here. The active sports stars, there's hundreds of them here. So there's all this cool stuff that goes on in Vegas and Henderson that supports all of that.
Yeah.
My favorite piece is the Strat. So the big gold swirl sculpture of Ebb and Flow that's in the main entrance lobby of the Strat is probably our most significant piece. Because first of all, it's massive. We had to cut open the wall of the casino to actually get it into the casino, which was people were a little nervous about that, but we managed that flawlessly, got it in, got it mounted, built the wall back, within 2 hours of us cutting it open, and had it built back. So that's, the other thing part of what makes our company so valuable is that we have the ability to do big things. We're a general contractor. We're also a C3 carpentry contractor with contractor's licenses in the state of Nevada. We have staff engineers, we have designers. So it's not just the fabrication of the piece or the shipping of it, or just the install, but there's a lot of logistics to making that happen. There are a lot of times where we have to use cranes or forklifts or, gigantic trucks to get stuff moved and shipped and in. And so our ability to talk to whoever's doing the remodel of the hotel or whoever's doing the build of the hotel, be able to speak the same language as them. And all my guys are like Ocean 30 certified and forklift certified and aerial work platform certified. So we carry all the same weight that any big national contractor does. And we're just like an art company.
Well, I like what you just said there. We're just like an art company. We like doing art, and it's interesting what art can do for a space. Like, it's one of those things where I know in certain deals, like when large construction companies are putting in a building, sometimes there's money that's required for them to go out and put art in.
1% for art.
What is it called?
1% for art.
Okay.
California has that as part of their legislation. Nevada is adopting that as part of their legislation. I know Henderson has already adopted it as part of it. So any big construction project, a portion, 1% of part of that project has to be committed to art or culture or the advancement of. And then how that money comes in and how it's distributed is, an interesting, sometimes quasi-political thing.
Yeah.
But so the hotels have realized for a long time that art drives revenue. They spend millions of dollars with us every year to do these crazy, and everybody's trying to do more creative, bigger, wilder stuff because they realize that the demographic that they want in the casinos, the people that spend money in casinos, love the art and they love stuff that they can interact with.
Yeah.
So that's been my big challenge as part of, an Art and Cultural Council in the city of Henderson, is I'm a big believer in the creative economy. So I'm always banging that drum, art, culture, and the creative economy. Because hotels, casinos, they realize that art drives dollars. So I'm trying to get, municipalities and city governments, state governments to also realize that same thing, that art drives revenue.
Yeah. And it's funny as a consumer of art, if you will, somebody who is walking by and, encouraged by it or just taking it in. I find myself at a point in my life right now where I'm really appreciating that kind of 1% or that uniqueness. There's a little spot in downtown Boise. I live outside of Boise. I go into downtown about 1 or 2 days a week. I love a little coffee shop there called Broadcast Coffee. They got a nice little outdoor sitting area. And then right on the corner, I think it's 11th and Bannock in Boise, there's this big pink tree, huge pink tree. Yep. And hanging from the pink tree are all these like really like large, they look like oversized swings. And the park is named after a politician who was a trailblazer, Sherry Buckner Webb. And there's some interesting aspects tied around political aspects and her trailblazing career, as well as human rights and some of the things that she's done, but it's expressed like really well. And it's something everyone can use and kind of sit on this big like piece of art in town. And I was sitting out there the other day and I was like, man, like this is good. Like this seems unnecessary, but also I'm really glad it's here.
Right. Well, that's the thing. What art means to every other person is different. Because when you look at something, you look at a piece of art, you interact with a piece of art, it's more about your personal experiences and what you've been through in life, how you view that. Some people are offended by stuff. Some people love it. Some people like outrageous. Some people hate outrageous. But it's art's ability to provoke discussion, provoke interaction, and it's really meant to have people communicate, right? Because like when you see this piece behind me, right?
Yeah.
It's hanging on the wall in my office. That's just a cool big slab of wood that somebody gave us. Said, I bet you guys can make something cool out of it. That piece, everybody that walks into my office sees that piece and they're like, oh my God, some people love the metal lettering with the chrome on it. Some people love the resin pour in it. Everybody, something different. Every time somebody sees something different that they're attracted to, and then they stand back and they're like, wow, I would love to have something like that at my house. Because then they see the possibilities.
Yeah,
And then it becomes a method of their own self-expression.
absolutely, man. I love that. So, talking about self-expression, those types of things, I couldn't help when I was diving into your backstory, these types of things. You're a musician, man. Like, take me through that journey. You went to Berkeley School of Music in the 80s.
I
Like,
did.
how take me through this kind of childhood journey. How'd you find yourself at Berkeley School of Music, man?
That's a great question. So I started off at UMass Dartmouth and just could not get my teeth into conventional education. And plus, I was already a professional musician at that point. Had played the whole Byron Club circuit throughout Boston. Had been doing that since I was pretty young. My brother Michael Byron, great drummer. He also went to Berkeley for a few years. Ended up leaving Berkeley, graduated from Harvard. But he and I, as a bass player drummer duo.
Oh,
Uh,
you're a bass player then?
yeah, I'm a bass player, but I'm
Oh,
also a guitar player. Um,
I'm a bass player myself, man.
okay,
I've
so
played since I was since I was 15.
okay, so I started off playing guitar, and then the band. I was in a band called Marrakesh. A guy named Paul Casanova was the lead singer, primary creative drive behind that group. Wrote most of the music. He went on to be one of the founders of the School of Rock in New York City. He's the guitar player for Gloria Gaynor now. But my brother and I just had, brothers have this thing anyways, right? And then we had this thing that transcended stuff as bass player, drummer, as the rhythm section. And people started noticing it pretty quickly when we were young. So we did some cool stuff. We played with some great bands. We opened up with some important people. Then I ended up at Berkeley in music management. Started a company called Creative Entertainment with a guy named Kevin Bell out of Philadelphia, who now is like this huge finance guy. You find him on LinkedIn. He's like equity investment partners.
Sure.
But so he and I started this company, and we managed a bunch of really cool mid-level Boston bands. I'm playing and doing that, and so while all that's going on, I met a girl in high school, going into my junior year, and I fell brutally in love with her. Her name was Karen Mann. Her name is now Karen Barry. Shout out Karen. She's a public information officer for the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department in Massachusetts. Just an amazing, right? Dichotomy of that is really pretty funny. But she was just this amazing woman. Her dad was a state rep, and he was just this amazing guy named Charlie Mann, big in the cranberry business. They were Ocean Spray people. And after dating last couple of years of high school and then through college, I got to the point where I wanted to marry her. And she's like, look, if you're on the road and you're gigging, I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
I know what that life's about. I do not want to be married to a guy that's traveling all the time, that's got women chasing him all the time. So what do you want to do? So I quit the music business and became a stockbroker.
Okay.
Kind of hurt. So I ended up, actually, I was a registered representative. I worked for a company called First Investors Corporation out of New York. And if you've ever seen the movie Boiler Room,
Yeah. Oh yeah. One of my favorite movies, man. I love Boiler Room.
That movie was about First Investors. I worked for that company.
Really? That's awesome.
So I go through the training, I get hired, I go through the training, I get my Series 6, my 63. And literally my first day was when the market crashed in the 80s. And it was literally a long line of cafeteria tables. And they put a phone in front of you and drop a phone book in front of you and say, start calling. And just cold calling people out of the phone book, setting appointments. And after a year, I was in the top 100 producers. And in the second year, I probably made it to the top 50. But with the lifelong addiction issue, that just, the addiction issue, and I'm good at everything I do, and then I get bored, and then I'm horrible at everything I do.
Yeah. There's a little self-destruction cycle
Yeah,
that kind of happens.
Yep. And went through, from 15 to 45, cycled through that, I tell people I've fucked off more $100,000 a year jobs than anybody you know.
Yeah.
But it's all that stuff is what brought me here today.
Okay. Absolutely. So, well, let's just keep pulling this thread, man. So you end up going music career, take a pivot, try to get serious, get into you know, a in a type of financial industry that is, I don't know. I don't know if it's shady or if it's like intense or like whatever it is, but it's calling asking for people's money to try to make investments that are risky in a lot of ways, right?
Yes. And, this was in the 80s when mutual funds were paying 16, 18% returns. So, the pitch was, the safety of diversification in mutual fund, you're getting these huge returns. Even government bond funds were paying like 12, 13%,
Yeah.
10%. Now like people get
5.
10%. Holy crap,
Yeah.
right? But in the 80s, our first mortgage, I think our first mortgage rate was at 13.5, and we get a great rate. Now people like 13%, they would never buy anything that had that kind of mortgage rate to it.
Yeah.
Right? That's like hard money loans from the shysters.
Yeah.
So yeah, so after all of that, I'd had enough of being suit and tied. So in August of 1990, me and 3 other guys from Boston, we had an opportunity to come to Vegas to work for one of the guy's uncle's construction companies.
Mm.
And so we got on the road and, drove out to Vegas. Took us 3.5 days. It was this insane road trip. Insane. Oklahoma City changed us forever.
Oh man, I'd love to get into that. I'm sure I'm gonna walk right by.
Yeah, it's probably good. That's something for you and I sitting in the bar together one day. I'll tell you that story.
That's awesome. So you end up in Vegas. You get into the construction business, man, and
In the
you start.
construction business, and then got enticed into the underworld a little bit,
Okay.
and learned how to sell drugs,
Yeah.
and turned out that I was very good at it.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I-
you were good as a musician. You
Yep.
were good in the stock business. You were good, and like you had all the qualities, time, effort, intensity. When you put that mix, when you happen to, it doesn't matter what it is.
Right. Doers are doers, and but as an addict, you don't really have a sense of self-worth. And so I didn't understand how valuable that ability was until I got sober.
Yeah.
And then my life just exploded, and all these businesses and money and legitimate legal money, but it took me getting sober and spending some time in penitentiary to get my head dislodged from my rear end and figure out, wow, there really is value to me having this ability, but now doing it sober, it's just crazy that, nobody's trying to shoot me, nobody's trying to stab me, nobody's trying to put me in prison. And I'm making more money now than I ever did in the drug world. And I made a lot of money in the drug world.
Yeah. So you got involved in that, and it was did you get pinched for dealing drugs? Did you get pinched for something else? Like what was
Well,
the thing
it
that's
was, if you read my criminal history, you'll see I have 5 felony convictions. And it's the textbook picture of an addict drug dealer. So my first pinch is a possession with intent. My second one is trafficking. My third pinch is manufacturing beef. So I went from
you went from intent to deliver to intent to distribute to a mass manufacturing facility.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm tracking.
Right. And so and you can see that, now being able to look back, I clearly understand why law enforcement, had such keen interest in me and what I was doing and what I was not doing, because I was a pain in their ass. I'm friends with a lot of cops now, and some of those guys are the guys that used to chase me around the city. And they're like, dude, if you ever go back, I'm just going to shoot you because I don't want to have to chase you again.
That's
I'm like,
funny.
please just do it. You know, if that ever happens, just put a bullet in me. I'm good.
So, was there things in childhood for you that kind of manifested like were you associated with any kind of crime, things like that growing up as a kid in Boston, those types of things? Or did you just kind of fall into it just because of the nature of the industry?
Um, I'd always been a big risk taker,
Hmm.
and I still am. You know, drive some. I have these very staid and stable, British business partners that I drive crazy because what I consider risk and what they consider risk are two completely different worlds. But um, I think it was just, I don't know if it's a character flaw or a character benefit, but you know, I just there wasn't much that I was afraid of, and so and I wanted to see how far you could take things, good, bad, anywhere in between. From as a little kid, I can remember jumping from roof to roof of buildings. People are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like 7 years old, like, "Ha!" And so that's kind of like, and then I get introduced to drugs probably 11, 12 years old.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden that was another vehicle that could take me way out past the edge.
Yeah.
So then as that was going on, and so the addiction escalated, the craziness escalated, everything just started to escalate. So I was definitely that kid in the neighborhood that the rest of the neighborhood parents were like, no, you're not hanging out with Matt and Michael Byron. But all the kids hung out with Matt and Michael Byron, right? And then, I get into college and now I'm unfettered by any kind of parental or societal restraints, and so now all of a sudden I go from like, I'm cruising at 65 when I'm young, and now I'm, got my foot on the pedal to 100.
Yeah. Redlining it, just finding those
Redlining it,
RPMs. Let's go.
right? And so then I get to Vegas, and now all of a sudden I go from driving a BMW to driving a Ferrari.
Dumping fuel on it.
Right. Right. Oh, how I could do 200. Wow.
Yeah. That's wild, man. So like, let's sit beside yourself a little bit. Like, what was the mindset coming out of it? Like, so you, live fast, you were in it. So you had the blinders on and,
Yep.
obviously you're such a successful entrepreneur. I want to get into some of these other things that you do as well, businesses, those types of things. But like, what was the shift? What was the bit of information or the advice or the thinking pattern?
A couple of things. It was, my second term. The first term, I never really made it to the penitentiary. I was in a federal holding facility for a couple of years until they dropped the indictment. And so, that wasn't really like, didn't impact me. It was like, wasn't a full blown penitentiary setting. It was a holding facility, federal holding facility. But at 41 or 42, going to a supermax state prison, full on gladiator school, that had an impact. I got stabbed, in a race riot that had, guy that stabbed me didn't know me from Adam, but because I was white, I got stabbed. And, that was a monumental moment that changed me forever, because at that moment I understood what racism felt like.
Mm.
And as a white person, you have no clue. You
Yeah.
can't. And then all of a sudden, as a hated minority just because of the color of my skin, it was a mind-blowing experience. So that was one of the big shifts. And then I wasn't, I hadn't been high, and at that point, it's a couple of years that I'm clean, and so now all of a sudden my brain's starting to function again. And I'm reading all kinds of cool stuff and thousands of books, and I'm reading to people like Andrew Jackson, and I'm reading stuff about John Kennedy, and I'm reading stuff about some of the ancients,
You got
Caesar,
curious.
and that it was this kind of whole reshaping. And one of my cellies was a mass murderer, and he and I had long conversations about religion, about this is a man that he lacked empathy. It wasn't part of his makeup. So this guy wasn't evil by nature. It was just a flaw in his mental makeup. And he was actually a great guy. Like, he and I became really good friends. And people are like, how can you be friends with this mass murderer? Well, because when he was my cellie, you're in a 8 by 12 concrete box with the guy 22 hours a day. You got to learn to understand people and what makes them tick and how they work, and so it was that whole kind of all of that, and having to re-examine who and what I was, and did I want to keep being that same person that now I had a chance to slow down and look at who that person had been for the previous 40 some odd years. I wasn't comfortable with that. So this was my opportunity to change it. So what do I really want to be? Well, I want to be that guy that everybody knows I can be, the guy that my parents always knew I could be, the guy that my brother always knew that I could be, the guy that my first wife always knew that I could be. All of a sudden, there was an opportunity to become that person. So it was really easy for me to reinvent myself into the right human that I wanted to be. And so then it was just, one foot in front of the other, and it became a really, really good thing.
So then there's, I imagine, and how long did you do in that last stint that you did?
4 years.
4 years. So when you come out of that, there's got to be some stigmas though, like your family, your friends, those that are close to you, like, are they waiting for you to kind of mess up again, or do they kind of give you the belief and the love right away? Like, at what point in time did you feel like you got past all that?
I was already past it. The day I stepped out of the penitentiary, I was past it. And I also, I met enough people in there that had the second, third terms, and you talk about that stuff, and guys knew that I was something different than the rest of the people. So they worked on me. Guys that were, in their 60s, that this was their third term. Now they were doing 10 years. They wanted to make sure that a guy like me didn't come back because they knew I didn't belong there. And they knew the thing that had gotten me there was all these crazy bad choices that I made while I was high. So you talk about, how does this impact your family? How does this impact your children? How do you not do this again? Well, it was pretty easy. Don't get high. So when I got out, I was already past it. So for me, it was just head down, one foot in front of the other, and I keep doing the right thing long enough. Eventually, my family will realize that I'm never going back to that. Eventually, society will. And that's what happened. Wells Fargo Bank got behind me early on.
Really?
The SBA got behind me early on. I went to the SBA the week I got out. Said, listen, I'm going to start a company. I'm a 5-time felon, 2-term ex-convict. How do I do this? And so they sent me to the SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. Big shout out to the SBA. And so they walked me through, how do I start a business? How do I set up bank accounts? How do I set up tax bookkeeping? How do, all the basics that nobody knows about. When I was in the drug business, it was just, where do I hide all my cash? Well, all of a sudden now I'm like in a legitimate business that you got to do right. And because of my history, I had way more scrutiny over me. I had parole officers, I had FBI agents, I had, bank investigators that were all keenly interested in, for the first year, I'm still on parole and I'm trying to do this. So eventually, my parents were like, wow, he really is, like, he's doing it this time. So then they got behind me. And then, and my son, he was behind me from the minute I stepped out of the prison. It was he and I pretty much, it was him and I against the world.
How old was he when you got out?
He was 17 when I got out. So he was 12 when I got arrested. And so, I missed from 12 to 17. So his whole high school, I was gone for all of that. So there was a lot of work that he and I had to do together as father, son, as humans, to rebuild that relationship and that trust. But, here we are almost a decade later, and we built this great company, multiple companies together, and, doing all these cool things. Excuse me. So that was another huge, huge part of it. Then after about a year, all of a sudden I realized that giving back was the most important thing I could do. Because I had found some success and I figured out the ways forward, I had to be able to share that with other people. And the easiest way to share that with other people was to give people that had been through similar experiences to me opportunity to come with me. And that's how we built this business. So with the exception of my son, everybody that works for me is either an ex-convict or recovering addict. And we are almost clannish with how protective we are of what we've built and our sobriety and just everybody that's part of this. And that's really been the key to the success for all the businesses, is our ability to, take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to us as sober, productive people.
And I love that sentiment as well. Is like, you're not just building a business, you're kind of building a tribe of
Yeah.
people like-minded, like we're going in the same direction. What a force multiplier that is when you get people aligned like that. The way that you can communicate clearly and effectively when you have nothing to hide. It's a beautiful thing.
Right. So I call it going ugly early. So any people that especially early on, it was really important that I was completely upfront with people. Said, look, I'm a 5-time felon, 2-term ex-convict. My last crime that I got convicted of was a financial crime. You're about to write me a check for $100,000. You need to know this stuff. And listen, if you don't want to do business with me after you know all this, I totally get it. And I never could be mad at you about it. But I just felt that it would be irresponsible of me. And what if you found out 6 months later that I had all this history? How you would be disappointed, you would be skeptical, the trust would be obliterated.
And it's not only that too. But by the time somebody finds out something like that, and the time that they confront or talk to you about it, that time in between their ears, that distance of them rallying themselves up and coming up with every scenario and poisoning the well when nothing's occurred. So then they come into the conversation tense or scared or shameful or, whatever that emotion is. You can't get that layer off of the conversation. It's weird. It's a weird thing.
It never goes away. So by going ugly early, I put it all out there. It's like, look, what's the worst thing that you could hear about most people? That they've been to prison, right? Other than that they killed somebody.
Yeah.
Right. The second worst thing is that you've been to prison. I've been twice. Right. Or that you have a felony conviction. Holy crap. How did that happen? Right. And, the thing that is funny is that growing up, I grew up in a very well-to-do family. I grew up in Abington, Massachusetts. I grew up we were the poorest family in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in most of southeastern Massachusetts. My dad was principal of the high school I went to. My mom was an elementary school reading teacher. All my grandparents and uncles, we were education family. I was the prodigal son. And to go from that to where I came to Vegas and the hinges came off of everything, so it's funny, all my friends back home only know that Matt Byron, prodigal son. They have no clue of the Vegas Matt Byron. They've heard the whisperings, oh, prison, or there was something, and I go back for reunions.
Yeah.
What is that? So I digress. But yes, so all of those experiences have made me a much better business person.
Yeah. And then how do you then, you talked about the support system that's there at kind of work, but how do you organize your days these days? How do you stay focused? What's really driving? How do you keep it in front of you all the time about the purpose or the vision or the thing that you're working toward, so that you stay on track?
That's a great question. And in the beginning, we were kind of all over the place because I also have 2 different construction businesses, and then I'm a part owner of a record label. And so there's a lot of distractions, but you got to stay focused on the prize. So obviously, calendar is a big thing for me, and sticking to the time, but also blocking out enough time just to be creative. Right. So we've made a pivot. Art is very much a focus of our business, but we're pivoting into the furniture business. And we've had some really strong success in the furniture business. The High Point Furniture Show up in North Carolina is next week. I'm going up. I've got meetings with a bunch of big furniture distributors that are now, really excited about our brand. We've come up with a brand of furniture that people have gotten behind. So for me, to stay focused is the creative side of it. That's what really, and for my whole team, that's what lights our fire.
Yeah. And this furniture brand, I imagine it's probably a higher end type brand.
Yep. So we're featuring, we have one brand of furniture called Urban Reclamations. And that's with a vendor partner of ours, a guy named Patrick Lemire. He's up in Seattle. He's designed this brand of furniture. It's all based on reclaimed wood, metal frames, a super cool brand. Go to urbanreclamations.com to see what it is. And that's how we kind of started in the furniture business. And then it progressed. So we've got with all the stuff going on with COVID, all the stuff going on with China and the tariffs, and now people can't get, it's 20, 30 weeks before anybody can get anything out of China, Vietnam, any of those places. So our big push is that we're American made, we're an American based manufacturing company. We're custom made, handmade, and all American sourced materials. So all of our lumber's coming out of Oregon. All the work's being done here in my shop. All of the joinery work gets done here in my shop. So, and as it turns out, all these big furniture companies that are looking for local, they didn't realize that they needed onshore manufacturing again. And we're competitive with the prices that are coming out of China with no delays. We have an 8-week turnaround instead of a 30-week turnaround.
Mm.
And we're American made. It's American materials and it's handmade. We're still hand making furniture, and this stuff isn't ultra premium. It's premium, but it's not ultra premium. It's affordable. Anybody that makes 70 grand a year or more could buy one of these pieces of furniture, right?
I love it. Yeah. So you're just finding, again, just kind of feeling out those opportunities. I have the construction companies going, and then all of a sudden, hey, can we fix these frames? And then that becomes a thing. And then, you've got complementary skill sets and design and,
Yep.
Using interesting materials to express things in an interesting way. So why not come out with lines like that? It's very cool.
Yep. And so we're also, we landed in this weird spot where we had an opportunity to start to buy lumber up in Northern California, about an hour north of Sacramento. And we had this whole deal put together, and then all the fires hit. The fires hit right where we were buying lumber from. So that kind of put a little hiccup in our supply chain. And then all of a sudden this cool thing happened. I was up there with Patrick Lemire, and we're going to go to Sonoma before we go back to Sacramento. And we're on the highway, and I see these logging trucks going by, and it's all burnt lumber. Bing, light bulb comes off. Well, now these wildfires, all of the fuel reduction lumber that we were going to buy is now gone, but all of the premium lumber is now burnt. But for us as a buyer, it's already delimbed by the fire. It's already debugged by the fire. Like all of the things that were a huge driver of upfront cost are gone.
Yeah, the fire is part of your supply chain. It's the best player on your team, right?
Right. So now we've come up with a new brand of furniture called Fireline Furniture. And so now it's responsibly sourced from burned areas that need the revenue, that need the help for the communities. So there's like all these cool things that are all just now of a sudden converging. So, I think that we're going to end up like really blowing up in the furniture industry because of these things.
I love it, man. I can't wait. I can't wait till you start rolling that stuff out. I'm going to add myself to a list. I would certainly love to have a piece in my home from
custom make you. Like we can do a cool big conference table for your office. We'll hook you up.
I'll call you, Matt, for sure. Hey, dude, I want to talk a little bit about the record label as well, or the recording studio, excuse me. So take me through that. So obviously now you're back into music a little bit. How'd that come about? Cool. What are you doing? And who's on the label? And that way people can go out and find it.
Okay, so it's Blockstar Evolution is the name of the company.
Okay.
And my partner in that is a guy named, actually, he's the company. I'm a small partner in it, but his name is Honore Brown, and he's the famous hip hop artist X-Rated, R-A-I-D-E-D.
Sure.
And he was huge in the early 90s. He was only like 17, got signed by Interscope Records, was on pace with Snoop and with Dr. Dre, and he knows all those guys. And then he got clipped for murder, and he did 26 years. And I met him about 6 months after he got out. I was working for Hope for Prisoners as a mentor. And Honore and I had both been interviewed because, of how we kind of found our way out of the system and found some success. And so I meet this guy. I don't know he's X-rated. I just know him. He's this cool guy, Honore, really articulate, well-spoken, extremely smart. And so we just kind of grew into this friendship. And he's here one day, and one of my office gals, she says, "You know who that is, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's Honore." She said, "No, that's X-rated." Me being a rock and roll guy out of the 80s, who's X-rated? Yeah. She said, "Look," and then she started showing me, holy crap. And so I look at him and he's grinning from ear to ear. I'm like, you bastard, you're famous, you didn't even fucking tell me. He's like,
That's
well,
freaking
but it didn't
awesome.
matter, right? I said, yeah, I suppose it didn't matter. So he had this vision, and I had the ability to open doors for him.
Sure.
And so I introduced him to some of the same investors that had invested into me. And they found his story so compelling and his vision so compelling. So his company was Blockstar Entertainment, but paying homage to me, he changed it to Blockstar Evolution. So he and I, we now have built a recording studio, film studio, in about 6,000 square foot of warehouse space here in Henderson as well. And we're working towards a much bigger facility that the city is now showing keen interest in. That, you know, we're looking at like a Tyler Perry type of facility here in Henderson, Nevada.
Wow.
And so, you know, it's probably a 3-year plan, but we've got significant support from key people that matter in the city, key people that matter in the world of finance and real estate. So that's kind of the big goal that we have. And we have another artist named McIntosh with a J, a kid out of Seattle, very talented. He's starting to blow up. We just released his first album. Honore has done a bunch of cool work in the recent months with Tech9. We have some crossover with that record company. We're similar. We're obviously not nearly as big. You know, they've been Strange Music has been around for 20 years.
That's what I was about to say. Strange Music, man.
Yeah, yeah. But so, you know, we know Travis. You know, we know Tech. Honore more specifically does. I've met them, you know, in different business dealings. But so that's kind of what we're shooting for. But we have a really cool opportunity because all these other places like Tyler Perry stuff, it's patchwork together, right? It wasn't like thought out as a big overarching cohesive plan. So we're trying to take a different approach to that and look at this as, you know, how do we do it right from the get-go? How do we build the correct infrastructure, bring the right power in, bring, you know, all of the things. What kind of amenities do we want to have for the people that are going to be there doing filming, or people that are there recording? You know, and we're not trying to, you know, we're trying to attract major talent. You know, what is a Taylor Swift going to want if she comes to work in our studio or do videos in our studio? What, you know, so that's where we're at with that whole thing. And it's really started to gain some momentum.
That's a beautiful thing, man. Hey, I've got to ask this. I mean, we've touched on a lot of different areas of your life and some of these types of things that have happened along the way. What's some of your biggest takeaways in this? Like lessons learned in life? Like what's the distilled point of
Okay, the distilled point is really, I had this crazy epiphany a couple of years ago. I'm driving back from LA and I got the playlist on, you know, and a Paul McCartney song comes on, and at the end of the song it says, "The wonder of it all, the wonder of it all, baby." And becoming clean and sober, that's the biggest epiphany, is the wonder of it all, especially with art, especially with music. And my whole life is about just the wonder of it all, how amazing it is, how amazing people are, how we met, you know,
Yeah.
sitting next to each other, you know, at LAX, right?
Yeah, we were just hanging out at LAX. I was
LAX.
in a food court. I mean, I'm
Right,
sitting
yeah,
there
and
getting,
you know, we just started
working.
chopping it up and you're in a suit and I'm dressed like I'm dressed, you know, like we were kind of like unpredictable people to be talking at a restaurant and you know, food court at an airport, and just those kind of things. Like I meet so many cool people on planes, right?
Yeah.
And my story's kind of cool. The guys that work for me, their stories are super cool. Those people, like, you should be interviewing them.
Yeah.
They're just like so much cooler than I am. Especially my son. Like, dude, my son, what he's been through. You know, you meet somebody that's like crazy cool and they're absolutely oblivious to the fact that they're that. That's my son. Like middle-aged women just go, oh, because they do, because he is so unaffected by who and what he is. He's oblivious to it.
Yeah.
And so when I get to see that, like the wonder of that, and how cool he is. I have a 17-year-old daughter. Oh my God, this girl, she's becoming a woman, which is another trip, but she is so smart and so bright and so perfect, just as a human. And to know that I created that, like,
Yeah.
and I didn't know her. I didn't find out I had a daughter until 8 years ago. Like the week I got out of prison, her mom showed up and said, by the way, here is your daughter. I'm like, what? And then 2
Wow.
weeks later, she passed away.
What?
Yeah.
What?
She had a heart attack, had a freak heart condition.
My God.
Yep. Called me. She was in Mexico taking her boyfriend to get cancer treatment in Tijuana. Called me, said, hey, I'm coming home. Mike and I are splitting up. Do you want to try to make something happen? I'm like, yeah. Just like I was crazy in love with this woman. And then 10 minutes after she called me, she died of a heart attack in the waiting room. So I went from being like, I'm out of penitentiary 3 weeks, find out I get a daughter, and then all of a sudden I'm a single dad.
That's like a straight up Forrest Gump kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like the story being similar, just
dude,
like somebody you knew and had good times with, and all of a sudden here's a kid.
If I didn't live it, I'd call bullshit.
My God.
Yeah. So she, and what she's been through with the mom passing, finding out all of a sudden she's got a dad, and then I'm her dad. And like we had the coolest conversation about 6 weeks after her mom passed. And we're sitting on this swing in the front yard. I'm like, so how does it feel like me being your dad? She says, it's kind of weird, but I like it. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. It's kind of weird, but like, This is cool, huh? So that's kind of been the basis of our father-daughter relationship, has been that. So the takeaway is the wonder that it is out there in this world.
The wonder of it all, baby.
Yep, the wonder of it all.
I love it, man. And so we're wrapping up here, my friend. I can't wait next time I get down to Henderson. I told you I get there in 4 to 6 months, go see Alex and Emily, hang out, play a little golf, work conferences, stuff like that. I usually reason I go down there. I'm looking forward to connecting with you in person. I'd love to see. I'm a supply chain guy. I love facilities. I love manufacturing. I love all that. So we're gonna have to connect.
Yeah, for sure. When you're here, you better come and see us. Absolutely.
And then again, shout out the couple websites for the businesses that people go to. So it's the
EvoArtNV as in Nevada.com. And then it's BlockStarEvolution.com is the record label.
I love it, man. Hey, well,
and again, UrbanReclamations.com is the furniture.
Perfect. And I'll put links to all those in the notes of the podcast as well. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your story, sharing your perspective. Powerful, interesting. Looking forward to it, man.
Interesting. I hear powerful. Yeah, but thank you. I appreciate the compliment. Jake, all right, brother. Pleasure.
Take care.
All right. Bye.